Good morning. This is chapter 19. This will be a pretty quick lecture today. Um, I have lunch duty, so I'll probably end this a little bit sooner than normal. But it's been a long, crazy week. I haven't been at school since January 18th, technically, far as teaching. Chapter 18, PowerPoint lecture is already up there, so if you haven't watched that, go ahead and watch that. That is there. Chapter 18 quizzes are up, reaction and quiz. I'm going to probably make the deadline super out there because, well, it's been crazy busy for all of us, um, no matter what school you're at. That being said, chapter 19, we will get through probably early next week. We'll be a few days behind far as where I want everything to fall far as scale. We'll try to get caught up here a little bit. The test, if you look at the syllabus, I think the test was meant for like February, somewhere the first to the third, somewhere in there. We're going to push it back till at least the end of next week, probably. And I'll get try to get the study guide up for it tomorrow for chapters uh, 15 through 19. 15 will not really be heavily on the test. That was more for just clarification. But chapter 16 through 19 will be on the test. Make sure you're following along, getting your chapter quizzes and reaction quizzes done. Don't get too far behind on that. I'm going to try to get caught up on all the grading. I think those of you that were missing chapter 17 got all caught up. We have chapter 18 and 19 now. Chapter 19 I'll get up here before too long. But chapter 18 quizzes, make sure you've got the reaction quiz and the quiz wrapped up here in the next few days. Okay, chapter 19, Safe for Democracy, United States in World War I. This really dives into World War I and some elements concerning that. Some questions, our guiding questions for this. In what ways did the progressive presidents promote the expansion of American power overseas? How did the United States get involved in World War I? How did the United States mobilize resources and public opinion for the war effort? How did the war affect race relations in the United States? And why was 1919 such a watershed for the United States? Um, Going back here for a second. Okay. So, first thing here, introduction. In 1902, W.T. Steed published a short volume of the arresting title, The Americanization of the World. He predicted that the United States would soon emerge as the greatest of world powers. This is written in 1902. Believed America's influence would be the pursuit of wealth and spread of American culture. Uh, this is 45 years before the real dominance of American culture and American influence in the world. Not till after World War II in 1945 does America uh, emerge as the greatest world power. But as early as 1902, this author wrote The Americanization of the World, predicted very accurately what would happen. Um, Before this, there was one major skirmish, and I think we talked about it a little bit, the Spanish-American War, um, and the impact that the United States had with the building of the Panama Canal. Just a recap on that in 2 seconds. Essentially, Cuba was trying to rebel against Spain. The United States came in, we helped them gain their independence. We wanted to monitor them for our benefit, and we also gained several territories, Philippines, Guam, Puerto Rico, just to name a few. That being said, after that moment, America was looking for its next big opportunity on the world stage. Liberal internationalism, conviction that the economic and political progress went hand in hand, Wilson's foreign policy concept that we'll come to know here in a little bit. Basically, we as Americans at this point started to realize our way of life was pretty good. So thus we wanted to share it with the world. Now the problem with that is, well, we kind of forced it on people at times that probably didn't want it. But the reality of this is Americans want, many people around the world wanted to be like America. We had a lot of opportunities, and we're going to start to see those manifest in the early 20th century. An era of intervention. Um, Progressive presidents were not reluctant to project American power outside the country's borders. So the progressive presidents was Teddy Roosevelt, Taft, and Wilson. Roosevelt, I took the canal. Uh, Teddy Roosevelt became far more active in international diplomacy than predecessors before him. He negotiated a settlement for the Russo-Japanese War of 1905, won the Nobel Peace Prize for that. Uh, he was the architect of the Panama Canal, which is a huge asset to the world today, but it really would not have been bored, at least by the United States, if Roosevelt had not taken that active endeavor in early 1900s. He also was very famous, and I had this up in my wall room for a while until it ripped, but speak softly and carry a big stick, meaning you kind of reserve yourself, you're quiet, but when you need to say something, you can enforce it. You can do it. Teddy Roosevelt was convinced that a canal across the Isthmus of Panama would facilitate movement of naval and commercial vessels between the two oceans. He was right. Now he supported the Panamanian conspirators and the rebellion to create a new country. Once independence was established, Panama signed a treaty giving the United States both the right to construct and operate a canal and sovereignty over the Panama Canal Zone. So basically, we promoted a revolution. We supported one side, and then because of our support, we were granted the ability to create the Panama Canal. Once independence was established, we did that huge feat of engineering the Panama Canal. One of the most amazing things, if you ever look at and study it and look at the actual thing for the time period, was absolutely amazing. Completed in 1914, reduced the sea voyage between East and West Coast by 8,000 miles. Significant. If you look on a world map, from going around the tip of South America, that is a greatly reduction. That's a pretty significant, isn't it? It's basically two widths of the United States. The United States is about 4,000, 5,000 miles wide. The other thing about going through the Isthmus of the Panama Canal is much safer. It's tropical, right? It's pretty nice. South tip of South America, not the most pleasant place to go. Jimmy Carter signed a deal in the 1970s to return in 2000 the control of the Panama, which we did. That was a very political dicey moment for Carter when he did this, because he was trying to basically, he was what he called a moral president. He wanted to do everything morally, what he thought was ethically. But he took a lot of heat for this, and some people still are not happy that we returned Panama back to Panama in 2000. If you look at the map up here on the board, if you look at the PowerPoint that I'll make sure I have posted here before too long, it's one of the thinnest parts on the land of Panama between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. I will tell you, right now, is it to the north? Yeah, two countries to the north, because you got Costa Rica, if you look at the map, just to the north of Panama. But you have, a country further to the north called Nicaragua. The Chinese government is attempting, at this point, to build a new canal through Nicaragua. Nicaraguans are fairly excited for this potential because it could economically boost their output, as well as give China a control in the area that they feel rival to with the Panama Canal and the United States influence there. Anyway, there's some modern developments there. Here's another photo. If you look at the PowerPoint of how big and wide it is, and a lot of this was built in 1904, 5, 6, 7 with that technology. Pretty crazy. A lot of this was dredged, dug out with not modern equipment.
Where's the lock?
There's a series of locks through there. I don't know exactly their locations if I get a more detailed map, but there is a series of locks that will either raise or lower the boats depending on but you can see a cruise ship's going through, so the lock's huge. Battleships, carriers, and such have gone through it as well. Okay, era of intervention 2, the Roosevelt Quarterly. Roosevelt held that the United States had the right to exercise an international police power in the Western Hemisphere. So initially, we're looking at just the Western Hemisphere. The significant expansion of James Monroe's pledge to defend the Western Hemisphere from European intervention. So Roosevelt, not as internationally minded, but he definitely wants to convey American power in the hemisphere and then extend it outward, but he wants to definitely extend into the hemisphere, hence why the Panama Canal was such a huge endeavor of his. In 1904, he ordered American forces to seize the customs houses of the Dominican Republic to ensure payment for country's debts to both American and European investors. In 1906, he dispatched troops to Cuba to oversee a disputed election. They remained there in the country until 1909. Once again, this is not Europe. This is only in the Western Hemisphere. So Roosevelt, very, very precise in how he does his foreign policy. He will send American battleships known as the White Fleet on a sailing cruise around the world to project American power to other countries. But once again, the area that he could really influence the most is the Western Hemisphere, North and South America. Now he'll be succeeded by William Howard Taft. Where's the head? Yeah, Howard Taft, uh, a chosen successor that he handpicked. There's some dispute later about that, but Taft will practice what's known as dollar diplomacy. He will land Marines in Nicaragua to protect the government to friendly American interests. Also, Taft will emphasize, moving on to the next slide, will emphasize economic investment and loans rather than direct military action, hence the dollar diplomacy. It's all about investing, protecting that investment, and so forth. Now, after Taft will be, and Taft's not he's only a one-term president, will be Wilson. And Wilson's going to practice what he calls moral imperialism. Now, what does that mean? Wilson, who was a very educated man, very smart man, was the son of a preacher. He brought a missionary zeal in the sense of his own, this own nation's moral rightness with him to the White House. That being said, when he's elected in 1912, moral imperialism. We want to acquire things. We want to go around. We want to influence power, but we want to do it from a moral perspective. We are good people. This is why we're doing it. We're helping people. It is a little bit racist to the mindset that we're superior, but on the same token, he wants to help others. That's his lens. He produced more military intervention in Latin America than any other president before or since. Now, that being said, the big area in Latin or South America that it's technically part of North America as well, that he's going to have any heavy influence in it's really going to be Mexico. Area of Intervention 4, Wilson and Mexico. In 1911, Francisco Madero overthrew the government of Porfirio Diaz. In 1914, without Wilson's knowledge, the ambassador from the United States did know it. Victoriano Huerta assassinated Madero and seized power. So you have a coup, right? So Dalton's the president of Mexico here. We'll use that as an example. Aiden kills him, takes power, right? It's a power grab. You've heard this in history numerous times, right? Look at Julius Caesar. I know you guys know Julius Caesar, killed by Brutus. The Senate's trying to take power from him. Obviously, it failed, and then the rise of the Caesars in Rome. Throughout history, people have been killed, right? Well, there's a coup in Mexico. Wilson, from his moral imperialist, his moral perspective of how to govern, is appalled by this. He stated, "We would teach Latin Americans to elect good men." What does that mean? Well, meaning the U.S. is going to get involved, right? Because we're the right, you're wrong, how about you go in business? When Civil War broke out, he will order U.S. troops to Veracruz, which is a coastal city in Mexico. From there, we will not be welcomed as heroes, but we will be look as invaders, not liberators. Huerta will resign in 1914 and will flee the country. However, Arab Intervention 5, this is not going to be the end of American involvement in Mexico. It's just beginning. We will support a guy named Carnarza. Okay? We'll trump him up. We want this guy to be president. Was he a good guy? But the point of this, what is going on in Mexico at this point? Is it stable or unstable? Unstable, right? He's building off of Roosevelt's perspective of we need to protect and influence the Western Hemisphere. Mexico's unstable. We need to stabilize it. Now, our biggest concern, besides the instability in Mexican government, is going to be Pancho Villa. He raided Columbus, New Mexico, killing 17 Americans in the process. He crosses the American border. If we had a wall, he couldn't have come across. I'm not saying I'm advocating a wall. I'm just saying, literally, if we had a wall, he couldn't have crossed. He rode horseback across the border, raided New Mexico, went across. I mean, in that perspective, a wall will work. I'm not going to say the wall will work. I'm not trying to get into that debate. I'm not saying that. This literal sense, there was open country. between Mexico and the United States, it blurred. Crossed, killed people. Of course, American press gets this. American President Woodrow Wilson angry. How dare they cross the border and do this? So, with Canards' support, about 10,000 troops under the Missourian, John J. Pershing, are going to cross the border looking for Villa. Basically, northern Mexico today, where the drug cartel operates, in a place you do not go today. Don't go to northern Mexico. If you're going to go, fly. Don't drive. You might die. And I'm not kidding. If you're going to Mexico City or any place, fly. For a couple years, Pershing is going to look for Pancho Villa. Disclaimer, he never finds him. Unsuccessful. He gets some of his henchmen, but they don't find Villa. Within a few years, all the leaders that were within this Mexican Revolution government had fell victim to assassination. So once again, we are preoccupied with what's going on here in Mexico, right? We are starting to look at the international stage, but we are not there yet. We had practiced for nearly 100 years what was known as the Monroe Doctrine. We were only concerned about Western Hemisphere, the Americas. Europe, you stay in Europe, we'll stay in the Americas. However, as we are focused on Mexico, will obviously make sense, right? Instability in your backyard. Just think about this. If you have a house, Dalton, I know we're neighbors. Do you care about what your other neighbors are doing? Kind of, right? You worry about if I throw stuff in your yard, or if my house is on fire, that concerns you, right? Or if your house is on fire, it concerns me. Put in this perspective, Mexico's on fire. We don't want the fire to spread over to our house. So we're going to protect it. We'll call the right people. We'll take care of it. That being said, what's going on in Europe, which is one of the most important things in world history, that to this day has resounding effects, that not only is 1914 on, it is all the way into modern day. And that is the Great War. Because of our narrow-mindedness at this point, our isolationist, as we call it, we're only concerned about our neighbor. We're not concerned about across town. Our across town can be on fire. That's not going to affect us. But we're going to be forced into a situation in which we have to respond. I'll briefly get into this. I'm not going to say too much about it today because I want to kind of prepare more and get into it a little bit more later. But 1914, as we are concerned with Mexico, a series of events are going to take Europe into massive devastation. It's going to start with, well, I shouldn't say this is where it starts, but the final culminating event that's going to result in war is in June of 1914, Serbian nationalists assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. This event set off a chain of events that plunged Europe into the most devastating war the world has ever seen. Now, is this event by itself the cause of World War I? No. Think of it this way. You build a fire. You just light it, or do you have to actually build up, get wood, get sticks, get kindling? You have to get a bunch of supplies, right? You have to get wood, you have to get kindling, you have to form it, you have to get it ready. And then you have the spark at the end. Franz Ferdinand killing is the spark. To put it in perspective, and this is where I'll spend the last minute or two before I wrap up for the day. Leading up to 1914, Western Europe had been in a series of competition, positioning, if you might have added. Germany had become a country in 1871. The old German Empire, various little states had emerged into one German Empire by this point. 50 years or so, 40 years or so, they have become one of the world's most powerful countries. Arguably the best land force in the world. The British had encompassed pretty much large parts of the world where the saying was true, the sun never sets on the British Empire, all the way from England itself, all the way to India, South Africa, the Pacific, Hong Kong. Literally, the sun never set on the British Empire. The French who had been colonizing large chunks of Africa, and French Indochina, countries that you would know better today as Vietnam. There's this great flux of power. Who is going to control the world in its future? In Russia, the question was, how can we make our country better? Mass starvation, imperialist ways of the old feudal system are dying, instability. But Russia still wants to be a player. What's going to happen there? The point of all this is Europe is heading towards war. These countries are all positioning themselves to be the biggest, the baddest, and the brightest, if they can be the brightest. That being said, they don't want to concede to anybody. So there's going to be military alliances, massive military buildup, all before the onset of war. The Germans, the British, the French, even the Russians are going to have massive armies already built up, the Austrian-Hungarians, before the war even starts. New technology be already being developed. It's militarism, as it's often called, or arms race. They're building up. They want to fight, right? Why do fighters train? Why do UFC fighters train? What's the whole point of them training? To get better, and ultimately, what are they going to do? They're going to fight, right? They're ultimately going to fight. They're going to win it. They want to be the best. They don't do all that training, that build-up, just to look good. Some people do, but the point of it is they're going to fight, right? You're not going to have a massive military build-up in Western Europe to this scale and not want to fight. These alliances are geared to try to prevent that, but the reality is it's not going to help. Each of these countries, do you think they think they're the best? Absolutely. I'm from France, I'm the best. I'm from England, I'm the best. I'm from Germany, I'm the best. And so on. But the United States, though we think in our own mind we're good, we're great, we do not want any part of this. This is Europe. This is not the Americas. This is not our backyard. Mexico's doing stupid things. We're going to take care of our backyard. And that's where we're going to focus. And for 3 years, it'll work. Tomorrow, we'll get into how the war really unfolded. I know you look at this slide 1, America and the Great War, you'll notice some crazy things. The Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, they're the Central Powers. The Allies are the British, the French, the Russians, the Japanese. This is way different than the war I know about, World War II. Not to be outdone, Italy will flip sides from the Central Powers and join the Allies later. It's a whole different war that we often don't fully understand. All right, we'll start tomorrow. We'll get into depth of the war. Make sure you're getting everything done. I won't post chapter 19 stuff for a day or two just so we kind of get chapter 18 stuff wrapped up. Have a good day.